Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Tonight seems to be the night several long-time lurk but don't posters have come out, so I may as well join in. These next few stories are pretty old now. They happened from when I was about 8 or so until I was maybe 17. Some quick backstory before I get into anything. My grandparents' house is in the middle of fucking nowhere, Connecticut. It was built in 1843 and is less than 50 yards away from one of the town's cemeteries. Anyway, I come from a very poor family. Several times over the course of my life, my mother, sister, and I have had to live with my grandparents in their house. I'm 22 now and have since moved out of state for uni, so these experiences don't happen as often anymore. But my childhood was a very frightening time for me. First story. Be me. Maybe 8 or 9 years old. Sister is about 5 at the time. Live in the upstairs of my grandparents' house. Sister and I in our living room watching wrestling. Mom in our bedroom smoking a cigarette, talking on the phone. Suddenly Mom comes storming out of the bedroom. Absolutely furious.
A non-stop thumping around. Are you wrestling in here?
We had no fucking clue what she was talking about. I was laying on the floor. Sister sitting on the couch. You what.png. Explained to her we have no idea what she's talking about. We didn't hear or feel any banging and we were like 20 feet away.
Well, if you aren't horsing around, who is?
We all hear, from behind her in the direction of the bathroom, the voice of a woman go.
B.
Look at each other. Look in the bathroom. Door is closed and lights are off. We book it down the fucking stairs. Ask grandparents if they heard anything. Have no idea what we're talking about. Attached is the upstairs floor plans of their house, albeit very poorly drawn. Over 9,000 hours in paint. Some of the stories I'm going to recount are just weird things that have happened in the house. Not necessarily to me. This next one, however, was one of the more frightening things I've ever personally experienced there. Be me, a few years prior. I'm maybe 6 or 7-ish. Sister is barely older than 2 or 3. It's around December. January, because my grandparents were looking through a country catalog and there was a section on calendars they were interested in. One of the calendars was a sort of colonial, early to mid-1800s themed, with the women dressed in those large gowns and the bonnets or whatever they're called. Sister slaps her hand down on the page. Mama, that's the lady that visits me in my room every night. Shipments.exe. Mom starts crying, throws away the magazine and doesn't mention it for years. At the time, we all shared the same room. There was a large closet off to the side that was essentially big enough to be a room. And that's where my mom's bed was. But my sister and I both shared the same sleeping space. I had trouble sleeping for months after that, because it always felt like I was being watched the later I stayed up. Occasionally I heard my sister whispering, sometimes laughing and sometimes crying at absurd hours of the night. Like 3 a.m. I feel like I should say that normally. I'm not a very superstitious person. I don't really believe in ghosts per se. Nor do I necessarily believe in demons or anything like that. But there have just been times where things happen that I just can't explain. I try to rationalize it all I want, but sometimes it just isn't possible for me to sort out in my head. That being said, I feel like horror movies, creepypasta, and my childhood experiences have made me into a colossal wimp. I'm terrified of the dark and I'm always stricken with fear should I wake up in the middle of the night and the TV or my computer are off. I just can't shake the feeling that maybe something is in here with me and I'm not alone. Anyway, next story. Be me, in that general 6 to 10-year-old kid range. Lots of things happened back then, so I'm not sure exactly when they did. But I know it was before high school. In high school, shit got a bit more real. Upstairs in my sister's room alone. Everyone is either downstairs doing something or outside playing. I loved the shit out of Hot Wheels cars, so I was racing them on the floor. I'd, with as much precision as I could, roll the cars across the room and see which one would touch the wall first. Roll 2 cars across the floor. They slam into the wall at the same time. Get really excited, exclaim that they tied and it was cool. From behind me, seemingly next to me, right next to my face, a voice says no they didn't. Sounds kind of like my sister, but a little older, just like a bubbly, high-pitched little girl's voice. Whip around. There's nothing there but my sister's Cabbage Patch dolls and teddy bears. Go to run out of the room. It's closed. What the fuck? WEBM. I never shut the door. Or ever heard it shut. Try and pull it open. It's stuck. I'm dead. Pull as hard as I can and door flies open. Run down the stairs and hear a super faint laughing coming from behind me. In between a lot of these events, my memory is very hazy. I can remember to the second what happened when they were going on. But in between that area, it's a huge blur. Like I can't recall it even if I try. A few short ones not about me, but rather ones that have been relayed to me by my family members. In dining room, there is an old defunct fireplace. It's filled in and only decoration now, but it has a nice mantle above it. On the mantle is an old, antique mirror my grandparents have had for years. It was leaning back against the wall and had several other decorations in front of it. One morning my grandparents got up for work and my grandfather sat down at the dining room table to read the paper and have breakfast. Grandfather cuts his foot when he sat down. Angry and in pain, pulls his chair out and notices a shit ton of glass directly underneath the table. It's the entire fucking mirror. Completely smashed. But it wasn't like shattered glass. It was in its normal shape, directly underneath the table, completely fucking smashed. Nothing else on the mantle was disturbed, nor were the chairs before he sat down. This one also happened to my grandfather. He is a huge skeptic. He's well into his 60s now and is a Vietnam vet. And I had literally never seen this motherfucking scared before this. Or since. Be me, sitting in the downstairs dining room bullshitting with grandmother, mom, and sister. Playing cards, I think. I'm sitting in a position on the table where I can see into the living room. Grandfather in a recliner just past the doorway, partially blocking my view of the TV. Kind of phasing out of the card game. Watching whatever he had on TV. Suddenly his recliner starts shaking. Not super violently, but enough to where I can see. Tell everyone that something might be wrong with grandfather. They turn around in time to see him jump out of his chair and come running into the dining room. He's as white as fucking snow. He's a white guy normally. But he spent his life working outside, so he's gotten a bit of a tan complexion, but it's all fucking gone. He looks completely drained of life. Eyes are wide, he's gritting his teeth super hard, breathing kind of heavy. Grandmother is worried he's having a heart attack. But he just shakes his head no. Eventually he explains to us that the grandfather clock in the room started going crazy. The chimes were slamming against the sides of the case and the hands were spinning like mad. We didn't hear anything. Says he needs some air and gets into his car and drives away. We go into living room where he was. Clock is at the right time and the chimes are completely still. He came back about an hour later and went straight to bed. This one is kind of funny. But it's also around the time shit starts getting more intense in the house. I recognize full well it's entirely our fault, and I probably unleashed a demon or some shit into the world, but whatever. Be me, at least 13 or 14 now. Have several cousins over for the weekend. There are 4 of us total, me, Travis, Devin, and Rob. Travis and I are of the same age. Devin and Rob are a year younger. Travis and Devin are super fucking superstitious, derping around over the weekend. We find a Ouija board in one of the downstairs cabinets. We decide we're going to play it later. Midnight-ish rolls around. We break out the Ouija board. I'm a huge fucking smartass at the time, so I decide I'm going to fuck with them. We all put our hands on. Start asking questions. Anyone here? What's your name, etc. Nothing happens. I decided the suspense has built, so I start moving the thing. Is anyone here? Yes. What's your name? Being the smartass high schooler I was, I said the ghost's name was Justice, and that he died in the war. Fuck with them a bit. They ask if Ghost can show himself. Move it to yes. I had prepared for this bit all night. We had an Xbox 360 hooked up to the living room TV where we were, and I had the wireless controller by my feet. I manifest the ghost by holding down the home button and turning the Xbox on. They fucking shit their pants. TV is off, but the Xbox is on, so I can't see the menu. They ask to shut it off. Hold the middle button again. Move the stick up and hit the up button. Power off console command. They shit super hard. So after a little while of doing this, I laid off and decided to let them fuck around with it a bit. So they're playing with the board. I'm sitting on the couch playing Pokemon or something on my DS. Playing video. Listening to them in the background. They keep asking questions for about 20 minutes and nothing happens. Suddenly it starts moving. I lower my video to see who's going to be the smartass this time. This is gonna be good. Is anyone here? It's moving at a snail's fucking pace. Yes. They're all hushed, even I got into it a bit. They asked for a name and if it was a ghost and shit. Snails, fucking, pace. Eventually they get a yes and some letters. Ask it to show itself. Yes. Nothing happens for a little bit. Excruciatingly long minute or two pass and then there's a creak from the opposite side of the room. Rocking chair barely starts rocking and then stops. Oh shit. JPG. They ask if that was the ghost. Yes. They start getting skeptical and arguing with each other, claiming one of them is fucking with them. They fucking demand that it show itself again. Minutes pass. They joke that there isn't anything there and it was one of them being a fuck. Glass bowl we had ice cream in earlier on one of the end tables fucking explores. The motherfucking bowl just fucking instantly shattered. Nobody was anywhere near it so none of us could have done it. It wasn't like it exploded like a grenade. The pieces didn't fly everywhere and murder the shit out of us. Rather they just fucking fell from where they were. Like, you know the slow motion captures of people popping water balloons and the water holds its shape and just drops. It was just fucking like that. The shit shattered and just spilled itself onto the table like fucking dice. We ran the fuck out of the house and hid in the garage until we fell asleep.
Be me, 15 years old. Be June night around 4 a.m. At Grandparent's house in Connecticut. Received a night vision monocular for Christmas 6 months ago, pic related. Can't sleep. Decide to use my monocular. Activate it and look out the window. My grandparents' property has a big yard with woods disconnecting it from the main road. Look out onto the lawn and activate IR light. Start scanning the tree line. As I'm scanning I spot what looks like a woman in an old dress and a little girl. Gut-wrenching feeling ensues. They are walking along the tree line. As I continue watching in horror turn towards my room. When they turn around, their faces look normal but their eyes appear to be glowing very brightly. They notice me. Shit. They immediately start sprinting towards the front door. Nearly shit my pants. I hear the door open downstairs. Panic. Decide to hide in the storage unit under my bed. As I hide I hear footsteps outside my room. Door opens. I hear them enter. Silence. Then one of them speaks. Sounds angelic but at the same time from the ninth circle of hell. Complete gibberish. I cry quietly as walk around my room. Wait for hours. They eventually stop and I can't hear them anymore. Grandparents come to wake me up. Find me in the storage unit. Tell them what happened and describe the pair. Grandpa turns white. They instantly call my dad and tell me I have to leave without explanation. Dad picks me up and I never have been back since. Repeatedly pressure my dad into telling me what those things were. He never tells me. To this day I still don't know what I saw.
I've had a few jobs collecting tap water samples from small systems all over Connecticut. Usually had to knock on doors and find someone willing to let me in order to grab one. I'd much rather have people say no so I can move on to find someone else than deal with extreme scrutiny. Some people were chill, nice. Hard to find most people home during the day because people work. One old woman talked my ear off about her son and barely let me leave the first time I went there, and seemed nice but lonely. It was a small apartment complex with 10 units, and only 3 people ever answered the door: crazy old lady, cute girl with 4 kids and a BF playing Xbox all the time, place was a complete mess, and cute single nurse who worked 3rd shift. I tried to rotate who I would visit each month to not annoy them. The second time I came back to the crazy old lady, she flipped out and screamed at me that I always go to her place. One system I'd visit had a real creepy basement. Always felt uneasy there and would just check all the stuff I'd need to check as soon as I could and leave. The air was thick from the machinery and paint thinner. None of the lights worked there so I would have to bring a flashlight. It looked similar to that /x/meme pic of Goofy emerging from a shady corridor, except longer, narrower, several rooms like that, no windows, full of cobwebs, some creepy thin wooden background stuff for nativity scenes, and piles of junk. A few months in, as I was walking in, some kids, maybe 5 or 6 years old, were playing outside, and one was telling the other about not going in there and seeing stuff move on its own, hearing knocks when no one was around. Didn't experience anything there though except the unease.
19 at the time, girlfriend and I really love Silent Hill. Found out it is loosely based on Centralia, Pennsylvania, and the mine fire that occurred beneath it. I live in Connecticut at the time, so only a few hours from there, so we made a day trip to check it out. We binge horror movies the night prior to get us in the spooky mood. Arrive and explore the place, checking out all the abandoned buildings. All roads apart from the main road are in a state of serious disrepair. Decide to go down a side road in my beater Dodge Neon, hear a loud thud and scraping, and I stop the car. Get out and check what the fuck I just hit. Turns out there must have been a pole cemented into the road and then cut away at some time, since a good 4 inches was sticking out of the road but covered in grass. The wheel is completely wrecked and I don't have a spare. Called AAA and told a truck will be out eventually since we are so far from the nearest garage. It is midsummer, so the sun is out until late, so we just say fuck it and keep exploring, waiting for AAA to call with an ADA for the truck. It gets later and later without any updates, so we grab some stuff from my car and go to the town hall that has the one working street light in front of it in the town. We sit down and just chill and play cards. Midnight and still no update from AAA, called back and still given an eventually answer. The town is completely pitch black except for this one street light. Suddenly a car pulls up in front of the town hall we're at, someone gets out, car drives away, and this person stares at us as we sit under the street light and just stare dumbfounded back at them. The person walks towards the building while looking at us, but it is hard to see their face since it is so dark out. Person opens the door to the town hall, which is pitch black inside, goes in and shuts the door behind. My girlfriend and I looked at each other confused, since we thought seeing 2 teenagers alone might set off some red flags, and someone would check if we were all right or whatever. Go back to playing cards thinking it was just a weird encounter in a spooky town. Another car pulls up, different make and model, and the same thing happens, again can't make out their face, stares at us and goes inside. This repeats a handful of times, which leads to us becoming increasingly creeped out and nervous. Around 2 a.m. a truck finally arrives, helps us with a new spare, and we get the hell out of there. Still no idea to this day what the fuck was going on with those people. First pick is the building and where we were sitting. Second is the road I was heading towards when I broke down.
May. Autumn in Connecticut. Dispersive camping is basically illegal in this state. Go camping anyway. But go to a forest without trails. Autistic no friends, so go alone. Wyandotte State Forest it is. I'll sleep by that pond on West Branch Shipog River. Not the first time. No one ever comes here. Especially no one camps here. Get to the pond, throw pack down, and walk around the area. Weird area. Ladder into a tree with no tree stand. Pick related. Burnt area of forest. Oppressive, hostile atmosphere. I kind of like the vibe, don't judge me. Keep hearing woo on the other side of the lake. Fuck birds, Amorite. They do sound human though. Call out. No response. Get to a clearing, scan area where sounds came from. Nothing. Definitely probably birds. Set up camp, cook dinner. Take photos for memories. Tinder. Getting twilight. Playing harmonica in a hammock. Finish song. Music doesn't stop. That's singing. Sounds kind of ethereal. Maybe screaming, hard to tell. Shut up brain. It's singing. That's very close to the direction I came from. Well, that's enough making sounds for tonight. Time for sleep. Complex, melding singing continues for an hour or so. Kinda pretty, kinda terrifying. Either foxes or fairies. Definitely probably foxes. Sleep. I was woken up by a bear in the camp. I tried scaring him off, but he took a while to leave. I went back to sleep and left the next day. Didn't get eaten by a bear or a forest nymph GF. 7 out of 10 trip.
One night I read a bunch of Skinwalker stuff off of /x/. I was living in an old house outside a town in southeastern Connecticut at this time. It wasn't exactly rural, but there was a decent amount of woods around and a small patch behind my house. I was trying to sleep around 2 or 3 a.m. when I heard the pack of coyotes that was in the area running around. They dashed straight through my backyards and then across the street to my neighbors to go into that patch of woods, so it was pretty normal at this point, nothing to worry about. A few minutes later I hear on the side of my house what sounded like something climbing up the side paneling like a squirrel would. Surprisingly, it did not wake up either of my dogs. It quickly made its way up the paneling to outside the second story of the house right outside my room, then made its way slowly around the side right behind the wall where my bed was and where I was currently laying, freaking the fuck out, but not moving an inch. I had blackout curtains closed well, so there was no way I could see a shadow or it could look in. After it made its way behind the wall of my bed, there was no more movement. I stayed there, eyes closed, not moving for probably an hour or so, hearing nothing. Eventually the sun began to rise and I felt at ease enough to sleep. About 30 to 45 minutes away there is a small Indian reservation on a bumpy-ass road. I went through it once on the way to an ice cream place on a farm. Never heard those coyotes again, must have left the area.
Driving home, probably around 10. I was working in Connecticut at the time and I lived in Rhode Island, so it was sometimes an hour or two drive home. Driving through a much more rural area of Connecticut, near Patchogue State Forest. Roads are winding and narrow in some parts of Connecticut, going around and over lots of hills. Houses are built on top and kind of even into the hills. Roads are fun as fuck to drive along. It's dark though, not a lot of streetlights in some areas. Running in the 90s, MP4. Fucking hit what feels like a medium-sized dog. I pull over, put my hazard lights on, and I take a second to look back in the road to see what I hit. Screaming like a child. Not the first time I've heard it. Probably a bobcat. They are pretty common where I'm from, still not pleasant to listen to. Not gonna get out to find out. Bobcats are not something you want to fuck with. I can see its eyes right behind the car, sitting in the road. Definitely a bobcat. Its reflective eyes are peering right through my rear windshield at me. I start to drive off slowly. Plan to be more careful because hitting animals can fuck your shit up. Especially if it's a deer. Driving very slowly, almost home anyway and have the day off tomorrow, so I'm gonna just enjoy the ride. Hear blood-curdling screams and jolt upright. Was pretty relaxed and was unprepared to hear the screams of the damned again. Fucking cat is following, can't see it. At least he's okay. Only see those reflective cat eyes. It's been like 15 minutes now, cat should have fucked off. Skedaddle and speed up, look behind me and can no longer see the eyes. Get home, head inside and pass out right on the couch. It's summertime and I don't own an AC, trees keep the house cool with the shade. Windows open by the couch. Fucking screaming louder than I have ever heard in my life. I look out the window and there's those reflective cat eyes. More screams. Slam the window and go upstairs, falling up them because house is dark as fuck at night. Zero moonlight, can't see shit, so I turn on the lights. I haven't heard it in a while. Must have fallen asleep at the top of the stairs sitting with my head in my lap. Go to bed. Probably just two different bobcats, but whatever.
Be me. Southern New England, the Connecticut part. It's fall, everything is yellow and red. Live in the woods, not too far out of town but enough where you can't see neighbors. Closest one is 200 to 300 feet away, can just see their backyard when it's winter. They keep chickens and geese on their property. One day we made small talk, he mentions one of their geese was missing. Probably taken by a fox or coyote. It sucks but it happens. Forget about it. Flash forward to late November, a few weeks later. Decide it's cold enough for a fire and head outside to below the patio to grab wood. Remove the tarp I had over the pile. Hit by the smell of decaying meat. Cover my mouth and grab wood, figuring it was a mouse or something. Bring it inside only to realize the wood was stained with the smell. Great. Head back outside to investigate. Check woodpile, no obvious clues, but it smells like rotten shit the further down I go. Move some of the pile to find it getting continually worse. Keep moving wood. Reach a cavity in the pile filled with exactly one goose. I stacked the wood a little before talking with my neighbor and hadn't touched it since. It wasn't dragged in, it was supporting the wood above it. The tarp hadn't been moved, the weights I used to keep it down had been in the same places. Mention this to my neighbor next time we talk. He says how he found a dead chicken in his basement once. The only way in was the stairway or two tiny windows. I have no clue what happened here. I'm guessing someone in town likes killing animals and putting them in weird places to mess with people.
This happened last week. Me, girlfriend, and I come back from day at the carnival. Dad gives us a ride back to her house. 30 minutes away from mine. Mom isn't home and she doesn't have keys, so we have to wait in the car.
Anon, think we can just walk around town?
Ask my dad. He says yes. We get out of the car and start walking. Her town is medium-sized and on the edge of the woods. Mid-Connecticut woods, she lives on the edge of the town. It's about 7 p.m. The sun's down but still slightly bright. Walk around her town, talking about whatever comes up. Get to this hill with a few houses on it. Walk over the hill. Stretch of woods with a house at the end. We walk over to it, through a dark stretch of roads surrounded by woods. Feel a really slight breeze. And I swear to God, I hear my name. Tactically shit my pants, keep my cool because girlfriend. Start rationalizing it as the wind sounding like my name. Stupid but calms me down. Get to the end of the road, not much other than a nice view of a river and the house. Start walking the opposite direction on the road. It's 9 p.m. And it's pitch black with the only lights being the sparse but bright lighted houses. Walking down a long, dark stretch of road. The left side, the side we were walking on, was a pitch black forest. The right was houses. Halfway down the road, I get a text from my dad, who was waiting for us to come back.
Anon, you and your girlfriend get back here, something's up.
"'Kay, Dad. Tell girlfriend we have to go back." Reluctantly agrees. Start walking the other way on the road. While walking, 2 deer run away from the road. Away from the forest. Girlfriend points it out. Think nothing of it other than cool nature shit. Get this weird feeling of exciting, pure terror. Look out into the dark woods now on the right. Shit my pants. GIF. A pair of eyes. Huge, white eyeballs staring right at me through the trees. Look a little closer. Make out its shape. Looks like a person but super tall. Maybe 10 to 12 feet tall. Its skin slightly reflected the lights from the houses. It just stood there. Its shape jittered and twitched. Stare at it for a good 30 seconds. Makes a weird shape with its mouth. Can tell because of its teeth. It smiled. Nope.jpg. Don't run or shit my pants. Just keep walking while holding my girlfriend. Girlfriend asks what's wrong. Say it's nothing. Walk all the way back to her house, where my dad's parked. The whole way I looked behind my shoulder, seeing if I'd see that thing again. Saw it only once while walking back. Heard twigs snap and leaves rustle while walking back. Not sure if girlfriend heard them. What did I just see?
Here's one I experienced. Be an exchange student in Connecticut. Hang out with friends after school and skateboarding. Really late at night, probably around 0:30. Pitch black small baseball field. Chilling in a small tower that was probably meant to view the baseball game. Smoking a blunt with 2 others. Everyone in the small town has went to sleep, so it's quiet. Suddenly we all get a disgusting feeling of being stalked by something. Our instincts tell us it's coming from the woods. We all turn on our phone lights towards the woods on the side of the field. See 2 glowing eyes in one of the dark bushes staring right at us. The eyes were far apart, so it couldn't have been a coyote or any usual animal. We freak out. Thought it was the drugs, but one friend was totally sober and saw it too. Get down the tower to go investigate. We move closer to the woods and it moves behind a bush to hide. We try going behind the bush, but it keeps moving. Don't hear any footsteps when it moves. It moves very quickly and smooth, almost no sound except for the branches it hits. Don't have the balls to go chase it because of the drugs, and our hearts are beating fast as F. Never talk about it again. Sober friend becomes schizophrenic after the incident and starts talking to demons. Moves out of USA back home to Scandinavia. Relief.
Year was about 2005. I'm 19 and fresh out of high school. Working in a machine shop, stamping parts out in Connecticut. I saw a spaghetti dinner flyer on the community board in the break room. Bottom right corner was a symbol for Eastern Star Girls. I found out who posted the flyer and asked him I'd like to petition to join your lodge. He obliged and brought me a single 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with some questions. I can't remember exactly, but they were pretty general. Are you sound of mind? Believe in a higher power? In good standing in your community? Stuff like that. I filled it out. The guy who gave it to me was an older fellow. Heavyset, Santa beard, whole shebang. He was the janitor at our facility. Once they accepted my form, I think I had to pay either $40 or $80 to get initiated. They gave me a date and time. First and third Wednesday of every month. I'd report to Widow's Sun Lodge 89 or 81, or something, in my hometown at 7:30 p.m. It was a cold New England winter night, dark as I arrived. No one was there waiting outside, no windows on the building. I knocked and the door opened. I remember the ambience of the building, lit with incandescent lights. But not all the way. Entering the building, it was a typical coat room, with a lunchroom, coffee machine area to the right. Immediately in front were large wooden double doors with cast iron fittings and handles. Apparently there was another new member that night there for initiation. He was an older fellow as well, possibly in his 40s or 50s. Very heavy set. We were told to go change into this weird getup. Involved taking my shirt off and putting something like a bib or something around my torso. I felt really exposed. Then came the blindfold. We were both blindfolded and lead into a room. 3 or 4 men were speaking and telling a story. But I could not concentrate on listening, as I was just concerned about how vulnerable I felt. After what felt like an eternity, they told me to do something with my feet. I remember this accurately. It was quite difficult for me to do as I was a bit heavy-set and out of shape at the time. I was required to make a T-shape with my feet, 1 foot forward and the other perpendicular to that. I had to stand like that for a while I recited some things of which I cannot remember. My blind was removed when I was done, and I guess I was an initiate. Or entered apprentice. I'm not exactly sure. There were 8 or 10 others in the room. Some normal-looking fellows, all had some sort of regalia on. One guy had a top hat. We sat down and a meeting was conducted. It was typical budget shit, plans for community service, and the upcoming fantasy of lights in the town over. After that, we moved to a side room, drank some beer and stuffed envelopes. Everyone I met there was super nice and just wanted to be friends. I attended 3 meetings and helped take tickets at 1 charity event. I stopped going because I was just a kid, I guess, and already had a ton of friends and activities to go to. They called my house almost daily for months to get me to come back. Mom would say,
Anon, the Masons left another message.
I never called back. I kind of want to join up again now that I'm older, settled down and lacking all those friends and events.
Went to a tiny private school. 2-story building with only a few classrooms that seat about 20 students each. In the space between all the rooms on the top floor, there's a circle cut in the floor surrounded by a railing that lets you look down at the lobby/waiting area. Finals are coming up and am studying my ass up upstairs and going to teachers for help and shit. Somewhere along the line, I passed out at one of the tables students could sit down at for studying. Wake up and it's 3 fucking a.m. Thankfully, my parents were away for a few days, so I wasn't going to get my ass grilled when I got home, but now I'm basically trapped in this old-ass building until they open up tomorrow unless I want to set off an alarm. Wonder how a janitor didn't notice me, but whatever. While looking for a place where I can hide until morning, I hear the school doors open. Hear what sounds like a huge group of people entering, not just something like 1 guard patrolling as I'd expect. What? Hear the doors close and lock. Nobody is moving from the lobby. Can't resist the urge to look, and do so. There's about 5 or so people hanging about, decked head to toe in white robes, but with black capirotes, the pointy hats. Weird insignia on chest and shoulders, not triple K. Talking loudly in some language I don't know, there were lots of Latin words mixed in though. I made out Deus and Mortis. They open the door to the boiler room and go downstairs. I sneak off into one of the empty storage rooms and nod off again. I still don't know what was up with those dudes. I can't tell you the name of my school, but it was in Connecticut and it supposedly had some ties to the Masons. Never had the guts to ask anyone.
I live in a shitbox backwater town in the Connecticut River Valley that's populated primarily by open expanses of forest and farmland. It is generally accepted that there isn't much to do in terms of recreational activity, so for the most part, a plurality of fun comes from nature. I'm a junior in high school, so when my close friend first got his license and inherited his mom's Jeep Liberty, we immediately exploited it through off-roading at a local tobacco farm that the landowner lets people use for that type of shit. The property in question is next to the Farmington River and has a pretty rough terrain, hence why people use it for off-roading, quadding, hiking, with the exception of the fields that are used for the tobacco. It is completely surrounded by foliage and the woods, as well as a handful of tobacco barns. We had been off-roading for about an hour before the property began to become boring. Throughout the duration of the night, I had the windows rolled down and was on occasion flashing a flashlight at our surroundings to just survey the area and attempt to spot anything. Around the time in which we were preparing to turn around, I flashed the light towards the corner or one of the barns. I got just a glimpse of what was an entity that spooked the fuck out of me. 12 to 15 feet in height, had discernible limbs extruding from its torso. It had an animalistic head which was contrary to its lanky humanoid body. This wasn't fucking Slender Man, it was way too tall and also somewhat feral looking. The moment the light caught it, it vanished. Like, I don't mean it leaped out of sight, it was just gone. Keep in mind that there isn't a young tree or debris next to this barn that I could have even remotely mistaken for what I saw. After seeing this fucker, I let out a very shaky and alarmed "W what the fuck was that?" which gained the attention of my friends, who don't really find me to be the type who is easily shaken up or scared, but I was panicking. I told them I would tell them what was going on later, as I was attempting to rationalize what I had seen. On the ride home, once we had successfully put several miles in between ourselves and that place, I began to explain what had occurred. My friends seemed genuinely concerned for me, as they had never seen me in such a state. Once we arrived at my house, my friend proceeded to drop me off at the bottom of my long-ass driveway. I dashed up that fucking pavement as fast as I could, and as I met the top of my driveway to enter my garage, the fucking entity appeared again less than 5 yards from me. However, in the same fashion as what happened at the farm, the thing disappeared the second my floodlight illuminated it. I've never seen this fucker again after this night, however. I have been outdoors again during the night and felt a similar sensation as what I felt that night. Not to mention, the first time I ever returned to that farm, I began to suffer from a panic attack. Does anybody who lives in Connecticut or even the general New England area seen or heard of anything that fits this description? I grew up in Machimoodus, Connecticut, and here is my spoopy childhood experience. For some backstory, the town of Machimoodus was literally founded on land that the Pequot, Mohegan, and Narragansett tribes considered to be cursed and actively inhabited by an evil deity. And the town's name comes from Machimoodus, which means place of evil noises. I really don't know what we expected. Anyway, so when I was about 8, my family acquired a half-built house way the fuck up in the forest and mountains of Machimoodus. The construction company that had started the house had gone bankrupt in the middle of construction, and the house had sat unfinished for several years. When we began work on the house, we noticed there was a really unsettling amount of dead wildlife in it. The unfinished floors were covered in layers of plastic sheets and shipping paper from the old construction crew, and between the layers of debris we'd find squirrels, birds, raccoons, foxes, and such in various stages of decay. My father had fixed up similar abandoned properties in the past, but he had never seen such a ridiculous volume of dead squatter animals. So construction went more or less as planned, though both my family and a good number of the workers would commonly see something in the corner of our eye when outside alone. It was always a dark object, roughly the size of a large dog, that jolted along the perimeter of the forest. Towards the end of the construction, we drilled out a new well for the house, because the first well that was drilled was left uncovered, unmarked, unfinished, and one of the surveyors fell into it and was seriously injured. When we re-drilled the well, one of the people who drilled it was decapitated on his next job in a freak accident involving the power lift on the back of a truck. I don't have more details on it than that. We had a serious iron problem with the water, and went through like 4 different water filters that couldn't fix the problem. Every tech and filter representative was confused as to why the filters weren't working. The water would run a rusty orange-red and stained our bathtubs and toilets orange. During our last 6 months with the house, we finally found a filter that fixed the iron problem. And our water well cap was struck by lightning a week later, and it fried the new filtration system. My father was a depressed alcoholic that was in an accident years before which ruptured discs in his spine, and it severely restricted his ability to move. From his alcoholism, he died on the property from a hemorrhaged ulcer. He drowned in his own blood, and from the medics trying to resuscitate him, he left a pool of blood on the carpet of our living room that we couldn't wash out. Even after all this shit, the last straw was. I had a super loopy Jesus freak friend, and her cult tier Jesus freak mom refused to let her on the property. They only came over to offer their sympathies after my dad died. And her mother said a little prayer. In what was, I swear to God, tongues. The front door was attached to our living room, and to the immediate right was the staircase to go upstairs. 3 lights were on in this little area. When Crazy Mom said her little prayer, all 3 of the lights blew out. I could settle for everything just being life and bad luck, but the last bit still shakes me to my core when I think about it. We moved very shortly after that, and as far as I know, the house has gone through at least 3 other owners since. We've all been curse-free since though, so there's that. Fun bonus. From the 2nd floor, we could see a distant radio tower far off into the forest. It was really, really far off. When my father had just bought the property, he was excited because the lot was acres and acres of forest. And he was an avid hunter. He and one of his friends went out surveying, hunting for a week. They trekked straight across and actually found the radio tower. The tower was located in a large vacant field full of golden wheat, with a collapsed barn. My father said there were what appeared to be horse remains in the barn, but I don't ever know, man. The radio tower was rusted out, the tiny attached station was abandoned and falling apart. And they didn't know how the tower was seemingly still operating. There were no visible roads leading to this overgrown field, and they were surrounded by dense forest on all sides.
Here's my story. This was a few years back when I was 13 or so. Be me. In Boy Scouts. Going on a camping trip with my troop. It's somewhere in Connecticut, and it's far away from the other campsites. Get there. Unload shit. Walk to site. Start setting up stuff, put our sleeping bags in lean-to. For those who don't know, a lean-to is a very small cabin with a roof, side and rear walls, but the front has no wall so you can see right out. After we collect firewood, we get ready to sleep. Get settled, sitting there in my sleeping bag for a while. All the people around me are fast asleep. Still awake because insomnia. Also, I should say that a few meters to the left is the troop leader cabin, where the adults were sleeping. Suddenly, everything goes quiet. There's a highway overpass down the trail so I can hear care all night too. Cars, crickets, random wood noises stop. Dead silence. Fog starts to form around the lean-to. Oh fuck. Avi. Loud bang is heard from the left wall. I yell, oh shit. Wakes everybody up. Another bang. Kids scream. The adult cabin lights flash on. Another bang. We all nope the fuck out of the lean-to and stand around the fire pit. Freeze in shock. There's a silhouette in the fog of a man holding an axe. One adult comes out and starts yelling at the guy to fuck off and get out of here. Other adults start running out of the cabin. All the kids, me included, run to another lean-to, which is to the right of ours. Guy starts screaming, we got him. Fucking loud yell. More screaming from adults. One guy takes out a gun and shoots. Guy then runs off into the forest. All of the kids are huddled, scared as fuck. Pack up our shit and get out. Never go back. To this day I have no clue who the guy was. The banging was caused by the short logs that were scattered around, he was throwing them at the side. Shit still gives me chills thinking about it.
So, X. I was hiking with 2 friends last Saturday night in southern Connecticut, a place not very challenging, and not very far from the road, completely surrounded by suburbia. It was nearing 8 p.m. when we thought we were nearing the top. 2 of us, myself included, had walking sticks because why the hell not, and our other friend was using his Windows phone as a flashlight. We came to a fork in the trails and with some uncertainty, took a right. Keep in mind it's pitch black at this point. And for the most part we tried to just let our eyes adjust to the dark without light. I, being a fairly jumpy guy, kept my eyes on the woods and constantly looked behind us. All of a sudden, I heard a noise like someone throwing a small rock in a pool, but very distinct. My friend with the stick, let's call him James, turned towards our left as we heard new sounds in the woods. branches breaking, etc. Our other friend with the light, let's call him Trent, turned the light on and yelled suddenly something along the lines of, "Oh shit, run," and took off back the trail. After 100 meters or so, he asked us if we'd seen it. Something white and, according to him, clearly bipedal, with a renewed sense of fear. We kept running. We took a different trail off of the main path and continued on, leaving the lights on this time. We successfully made it to the top and spent around 20 minutes talking there. Then, we began the descent. We encountered nothing the way back down for a time. Eventually, when all seemed well, I stopped on a small bridge and turned my own light off, just to see if my friends would notice my disappearance. Thankfully, I didn't have to wait too long. James turned back and called out to me. I ran at them lightless and shrieking in an attempt to scare them, but to no avail. Then, we heard something. To me, it sounded like muffled voices talking over a ridge to our left. But there was no path there. We started out jogging down the trail as it was the final stretch. All of a sudden, white shapes began darting all through the woods and across the trail. James grabbed my shoulder and screamed, "Shit," and we both raised our sticks before we took off past them down the path. I had my own light on at this point as well as Trent. And as I turned to our left, I saw a pair of large green eyes staring right at me. These things were probably up to my chest, but I really didn't get a good look at them. They literally were chest-high white blobs. We made it out unscathed. But now I ask you, X, were those animals? What kind of animal is chest-high, white with green eyes, and travels in a group of 4+? And Trent is still very convinced that what he saw first was bipedal but still just white.
Connecticut resident. Visiting a park or library in broad daylight is considered dangerous in Hartford, Waterbury, Bridgeport, and New Haven. Hartford has already been ranked as the worst capital city in America. Both cities and suburbs have more abandoned houses, apartments, and factories than a Bulgarian ghetto, many of which are inhabited by hobos, and aren't even cleaned up when they're vandalized or burned down. Suburbs have a combination of too few street lamps and too many forests, plus bears destroy people's backyards and coyotes run wild in the streets. Large amount of Jehovites that force their children under the age of 14 sell door to door. Rural areas are basically just miles of farmland and people living in either shacks or mini mansions on forested hills. Apparently one of America's most haunted estates, hence Lorraine and Ed Warren. 18th century graveyards on the side of highways, plus supposedly haunted ones like Union Cemetery. Connecticut folks are sometimes stereotyped by other New Englanders as liking to go out of their way to illegally dump human cremains in bizarre places.
Glastonbury Glawackus. During the unusually cold winter month of January 1939, the residents of Glastonbury, Connecticut, had something to worry about besides the snow, the Glastonbury Glawackus. This howling beast terrorized the night that winter. A furry monster the size of a large black dog with the face of a cat, slaughtered small dogs, goats, and sheep, according to a story in the Hartford Courant. Hunters combed the forests and hills with dogs. The dogs occasionally chased something unseen through the brush, but the Glawackus remained elusive. Some claimed it was a mountain lion that escaped from a zoo, or a Canada lynx in the area, but a hunter from Hartford, William F. Bonvouloir, encountered the beast. He saw a beautiful black creature about 3 feet long with a tail 2 feet long leap out of the scrubwood, according to the Courant. He shot at it twice with a 12-gauge shotgun, but missed both times. As evidence of a monster near Glastonbury dwindled by that next July, hunters killed a big, brown wild dog, and claimed the end of the Glawackus, although many residents of Glastonbury had their doubts.
War and Occult Museum. Annabelle I.E., the Haunted Doll. In 1970, a mother purchased an antique Raggedy Ann doll from a hobby store. The doll was a present for her daughter Donna on her birthday. Soon they discovered the doll would move on its own and it could write too. It is now in the War and Occult Museum. After being relocated to the museum, it even caused the death of a young man who taunted the doll. Annabelle is locked in a glass box. But it's said that it still moves and growls at visitors.
The old Saybrook Blockheads sighting was an extraterrestrial sighting that took place on December 16, 1957, near Old Saybrook, Connecticut. Retired teacher Mrs. Mary M. Star reported that a bright light awoke her around 2 to 3 in the morning. Peering out her bedroom window, she thought at first that she was looking at a downed airplane until she realized that the object was hovering above her clothesline. Appearance. Through the craft's large, square windows she witnessed two strange entities pass by one another with their right arms in the air. Their featureless appendages had no hands, their heads were transparent cubes with bright red cores and their rubbery bodies flared out like skirts. She could not see if they had any legs, but guessed that they were less than 4 feet tall.
Windsor, Loomis Chaffee High School. One can expect that such an old establishment would have a history. In Founders Hall, which used to contain a dormitory on the 3rd floor, it is said that one or more students take their own lives. Late at night, the 2nd and 3rd floors have a significantly unsettling feeling about them, and without the lights on, one cannot see from one side of the hallways to the other. Doors seem to open and shut on their own, and light footsteps, like someone sneaking about, can often be heard. Though these occurrences may be quite freaky, any spirits that may inhabit the area do not seem malicious. There is also a system of tunnels that runs beneath the school. This is no rumor, these tunnels exist. Footsteps of persons sprinting can often be heard at late hours, and some have reported seeing a man with straight black hair standing motionlessly at the end of one tunnel, staring intently at the wall. Visitors are warned not to go in these tunnels alone, as whatever is there seems rather unwelcoming. Some people who decided to go alone came out with scratches and bruises on their arms and chest. The health center has been known to harbor a woman in white who tends to sick students at night. One student reported waking up in the early morning, about 3 a.m., and being given water by a woman in white. When she woke up later, she spoke to the nurse on duty. The nurse told her that she had been the only one working all night. The woman in white could possibly have been an early headmaster's wife, who died young and spent time caring for ailing students in the health center.
Milford, Charles Island, located off of Silver Sands State Beach, has a long and mysterious history. It was a point of conflict between the English settlers and the Weppawag Indians, who regarded the island as sacred ground, connected with spirits. Following the defeat of the tribesmen, the chief put a curse on the island, pronouncing any shelter will crumble to the earth, and he shall be cursed. About 25 years after the defeat of the Weppawags, the notorious pirate Captain Kidd, who knew the island's reputation, is known to have buried part his treasure on the island, and treasure hunters from around the country still look for this stash today. It is told that in 1852 men found the treasure, only to run away from the island screaming about a screeching, flaming skeleton descending from the sky. They spent the remainder of their lives in an asylum. At the end of the 18th century, a monastery was built on the island. After the monks moved in, dismissing the curse as pagan savagery and Indian folklore, a series of mysterious deaths, self-ends, and bouts of insanity, and subsequent intensifying hauntings forced them to abandon the monastery. The crumbling ruins can still be seen today. In the 1950s an attempt was made to open a seaside restaurant and lodge on the desolate island. A devastating and lethal fire, still to which cause remains unknown, ended whatever building projects scheduled for the island, and no one has built upon it since. All that is left from this is a tumbling brick wall. Today, reports from hikers abound about seeing glowing specters flitting through the trees, disembodied voices, and phantom monks making processionals through the monastic ruins. One also hears of seeing nighttime Indian festivals and hearing jazz music near the old site of the restaurant. The only access to the island is a mysterious causeway that only surfaces from the sea at low tide. People, in the summer months, frequent the island for its beach and seclusion, as well-preserved trails. The ghosts won't bother you if you respect them. Just don't build, and don't dig.
Groton, LedgeLight Lighthouse. Story has it that John Ernie Randolph and his wife lived at the LedgeLight, which sits out in the middle of the ocean, just at the opening of the Thames River, no land around it whatsoever. When there, the wife kept telling Ernie that she was unhappy there and too secluded. Ernie made no attempt to move or find another job. So one day his wife took off with a Block Island ferry captain. Because of his wife's leaving, Ernie became so depressed that he slit his throat and then jumped to the waters below from the top of the lighthouse. Stories have it that Ernie now haunts the lighthouse. The lighthouse was turned over to the Coast Guard, who manned it, and cadets have reported the opening and closing of doors, the decks being swabbed when they weren't the ones who did it. The lighthouse is now unmanned and run on a timer for when the light goes on and off. Project Oceanology of Groton has summer tours out to the lighthouse, but this is the only way anyone will be able to go there.
Bristol, Lake Compounce Amusement Park, the oldest running amusement park in the world. The first hauntings date back to the opening of the park in the late 1800s when the ghost of the former owner of the land, Chief Compounce, who killed himself in the lake the day before the land was to change hands. Since that time, every building on the land has experienced hauntings at one time or another. As well, death has been a plague at the park. In recent years, a child died from injuries received from a near drowning at the lake, a worker was killed underneath a rotor ride, and another was decapitated by a roller coaster. Most of the hauntings have occurred in the Starlight Ballroom. It was said, but this author has not confirmed, that the head of the Norton family, who bought the land from Chief Compounce, died after mysteriously falling from a ladder. The park is now under new management, and is running successfully. However, the park still employs overnight security service people, who all, without prior knowledge of hauntings, have all disclosed their fears and sightings around the park. June 2008 correction, Chief Compounce died while trying to swim.
Killingworth, Nineveh Falls, located at a crossing of the Hammonasset River separating the towns of Killingworth and Madison, is the former site of Nineveh Falls. It is said that the ghost of a young Indian maiden and warrior haunt this area. In pre-colonial times, a young warrior went to war with the rest of the warriors in his village against another tribe, leaving his love behind. Soon word was received of a great battle, and the villagers were told that there were casualties, including the young warrior. The young maiden became inconsolable and wandered to the high cliffs at Nineveh, where she jumped to her death. Shortly afterwards, the young warrior, unharmed, arrived home only to find that his love had taken her own life. Despondent, he went to the same area and took his life in the same manner to be with his love for eternity.
Middlebury, Little People's Village, located in the woods, on the side of an abandoned road, possibly Old Waterbury Road, is a village of sorts, a number of very complex and detailed small stone houses standing about 3 to 5 feet high built into the hill. Some of the buildings are framed, others are more traditional. They have the appearance that they are gutted and condemned. Inside of the little houses are elaborate room structures, staircases, pathways lead up hills through the woods to them, tiny pathways. The area is overgrown. Built into the side of a rock is a throne, life-sized chair of sorts with several symbols around it. The legend is that if you sit on it you will die in 7 years. This is only legend though. Next to the village itself is the ruins of an old stone house with iron bars on the window. Very negative energy comes from here. In the evening the road to the village is so loaded with negative energy that it is virtually impossible to travel it. It is soundless and still. En route to the village and at the village itself several pentagrams can be seen from time to time on the ground. Overall a very eerie, very negative feeling pervades the area of this extremely mysterious village in the woods. November 2003 update. It is actually right off Interstate 84 exit 17 on the Middlebury/Waterbury line. All the other info is pretty accurate. There is really only one little house left and that is partly destroyed. The stone house is still there and so is the throne. There is also a cellar that you can go down into. Place is very spooky. Legend is that there was a man and woman who lived there and she was crazy and thought she was the queen of the little people. She made her husband build her a throne and all the little houses. Then she killed her husband and herself, or he killed her and himself. There are different variations of the story.
Dudleytown, also known as the Village of the Damned, is considered cursed because of its connection with the Dudley family who moved to the town in the 1740s and had such an influence that the place took their name as its own. According to local legend, the Dudley curse can be traced back to England when Edmund Dudley was beheaded by King Henry VII and his son plotted to overthrow Edward VI and was also beheaded. Another Dudley caught the plague while in the military and spread the disease to thousands of soldiers and civilians. A scourge was put on the descendants of the Dudleys in America, ensuring doom and tragedy would follow them, leading to murder, suicide, and unnatural deaths in Dudleytown, Connecticut. Dudleytown seemed to be a magnet for freak occurrences. The town featured an unusual amount of disappearances, cases of insanity, and bizarre deaths. Around 1759, a mysterious plague swept through the town and took the lives of many. Allegedly, General Herman Swift, who had served under George Washington in the American Revolution, lived in Dudleytown. In 1804, his wife, Sarah Fay, was struck by lightning and killed instantly on their front porch. Because of her demise, the general himself lost his mind and soon passed. John Patrick Brophy was one of the last residents of the town in the late 1800s or early 1900s. Many had already moved away, passed, or simply vanished. The Brophy family seemed to become the curse's new focus, starting with the passing of his wife from disease. The curse also caused both of his children to vanish into the forest shortly after their mother's funeral. The Brophy's house ended up burning to the ground, and Brophy himself also vanished mysteriously. In another version of the story, Brophy went mad and abandoned the town. In another tale, Dr. William Clark came to the Cornwall region and fell in love with the empty forest. He purchased many acres in Dudleytown, and the curse began to stir. One summer, Dr. Clark ran off to New York for business and left his wife alone in their home. He returned 36 hours later to find her completely insane, and she later took her life. In a more accurate account, however, Clark's wife took her life in New York.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.